All right. This is Dan Reecer from the Akala team, and I'm joined here today by Branimir from the OriginTrail team. So, Branimir, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction and we can go ahead and get started?
Sure. Hi, Dan. Thanks for getting this started, and thanks everyone for listening. I'm Branimir, the CTO and one of the co-founders of Trace Labs, core developers of OriginTrail. You might have heard of us. We are the core builders of OriginTrail Decentralized Knowledge Graph, and we'll be speaking a little bit about that today. Yeah, I
Awesome.
guess that's good for the start.
Yeah, and the kind of the origin of this conversation is the announcement that we are putting out today when we're publishing this video, along with kind of a blog to kind of talk about the integration between OriginTrail and Akala. OriginTrail, we'll get into more details, but you guys have been building for a while now and starting to make a move into the Polkadot ecosystem in many ways. So we can talk about that. But before we get into that, maybe could you give us, just for people to get to know you personally better, talk about maybe your career and what led you to starting OriginTrail, kind of what got you into blockchain in general?
Sure, yeah. So actually, OriginTrail itself as a project exists from officially from 2013, though the first rudimentary prototype was actually made 10 years ago, 2011, when the three of us co-founders actually started this first project for actually a food supply chain company in Europe, which was actually organic beef producer. So using that old OriginTrail, you were able to basically query data for products and assets in the physical world, and you were able to see all the data about it. So which farm it comes from, all the certificates, where it's been, and so forth. And it actually got quite some traction, and a lot of companies got interested up to a point around 2016 when we started experimenting with, for the first time, actually, with decentralized technologies. So far, before that, we were all about centralized old school systems. And at the time when we did this, it actually made a lot of sense because we were getting into a couple of bottlenecks in scaling, and specifically in terms of companies wanting to use some centralized solution that belonged to us and was hosted by us. And actually, that's when we sort of gave birth to the idea of the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph. And just as a bit of an intro into that, so OriginTrail is not a blockchain. It actually utilizes multiple blockchains, and it's been designed from the get-go as to be, let's say, blockchain agnostic. And it's actually a distributed decentralized network that hosts this decentralized knowledge graph. So it's kind of like a merger of technologies such as blockchain and knowledge graphs. And for those of you who don't know about knowledge graphs, that's basically under the hood of all of these major Web2 companies such as Google, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, Uber. Pretty much all of them use it in some capacity. So yeah, that's we started 2018. We actually launched the mainnet OriginTrail. It's been live for already almost 4 years, and it's been very well adopted. There's quite a few major companies using it in production for several years already, and now we're preparing to expand it further and are building on several new things that are to come, including the things that we'll be talking about today.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's a good intro.
Yeah. Let's get into the decentralized knowledge graph a little bit more. So I guess I'll try to repeat back to you what I'm understanding is, so it's not a blockchain. It's kind of like, could I describe it as like this, almost like a mesh of like assets and data that you can essentially use to create like associations between these assets and these points of data, and then use that as a way of kind of like allowing developers or applications to basically like use that as like a almost like a decentralized Google. So you're like querying this huge network of assets and information and being able to make associations between things that are like kind of put into that network or contributed to that network. Is that kind of right? Or how else would
That's one
you?
of the most precise descriptions I heard from anybody so far. So that's really good. Yeah, you're totally right. So it's really this network of assets and data around them. And actually, knowledge graphs, when they were conceived, the kind of the thing that Google used to describe them was saying that they actually describe things, not strings. So the notion of moving from data to a higher order towards knowledge, and then having these assets actually be part of it. So actually, Google uses it for search, by the way. So every time you search for something in Google, it queries the knowledge graph for assets and data on that, specifically in this centralized way, obviously for Google. So in the decentralized knowledge graph, it's a network that, first of all, it's a permissionless network. Anybody can join it. Anybody can run a node for it. And it's completely symmetric. So there's no nodes that are like whatever, more powerful or not. The point here is to have a global, as you said, data mesh or knowledge graph interconnected, having data cleverly distributed across all of this network, and then all of this data actually being rooted in some blockchain, making it verifiable, the knowledge graph making it discoverable, and also making it valuable, because the notion of connection, as you said, is one of the key things that actually brought value to all of these large companies in Web 2. If you look at Facebook leveraging network effects on obviously the network of people, then Google actually using this to power and to win the search engine race, but actually leveraging the power of connections between websites. Like if you ever heard of PageRank, PageRank is exactly this. It basically, in a way, cleverly counts the number of links to some websites, and the more links to it, the more powerful links to it, the more valuable it is, and it will show up higher in your search results. So that is exactly what the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph can do in the decentralized way, completely open source and permissionless, of course. And it's rooted in multiple blockchains. So currently it is, when I say rooted, it's connected with Ethereum, XDAI, Polygon blockchains, but very soon also to be available for the Polkadot ecosystem as well, which we're super excited about.
Awesome. Okay, it makes sense to me. I think for people to get a better understanding, it would maybe help to talk about some of your existing partners and people that are actually using OriginTrail right now to help their existing businesses. You've got a lot of cool examples in the real world of people and names that I think many of us know and have heard of. So could you maybe talk about, just to make it a little bit more concrete for people, some of your current partners and how they're helping kind of improve their own business outcomes by using OriginTrail?
Sure. So there's quite a few of them. I'll just mention some, and then I'll explain a little bit deeper what they do. So one of the largest users is actually what is called the Scan Association. You don't probably know about them in that sense, but that actually the members of the association who are the users. That is really the biggest retailers in the world: Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Disney, all these major companies. And actually, they've been using it together, even though they're competitors, which was a very interesting thing to see materialize, because they actually use it for data sharing. So they share assets which are factory audits from all over the world, and that means audits on security, which they also share with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency, CBP. And the reason there is that they don't want to compete on security. They all source from the same companies around the world. They source these products, assets, and they actually exchange information through the graph. So anytime they actually get some new product imported, they are able to see all the details, including audits that have been performed by security auditors around the world on this particular place, while still keeping privacy. So they're one of the biggest users. Also, apart from them, the British Standards Institution is actually utilizing OriginTrail for several different things. In their case, they're using it actually for training certificates, so more of a verifiable credential-like use case if somebody's into that. And that means that essentially all of the over 400,000 issued training certificates that BSI does, British Standards Institution, over the year actually ends up in the graph and is queryable and discoverable and verifiable. Another interesting use case is the Swiss Railway Company, SBB. they use it to track assets in basically their whole supply chain. And what's interesting there is that, trains, well, they don't kind of stay confined within one country and within one system. They travel all over Europe. So they actually use it to aggregate and connect with data from their partners from other countries, that being also other rail companies, but also service providers. Like, for example, one of the latest things we've done was tracking welding events. They want to know like how this works and when the actual rails are going to potentially split. They try to predict this using the data in the decentralized knowledge graph. There's a few other ones. One very interesting coming from Ireland is also Monasterim Distillery. They're actually creating really, really awesome whiskey that you can actually track from grain to glass, as they call it, using OriginTrail. So you're able to know exactly how and when and what went into that particular bottle of whiskey. And those are just some of the major examples. There's also use cases in food supply chains we've been active on. But recently, because the technology is very fundamental and in a way widely applicable, because it's essentially you can look at it as some sort of a super powered decentralized database. Databases can be used for all kinds of things, right? So we actually had a very good demo last week and in New York at the NFT NYC conference for how you can use the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph for NFTs, actually giving them superpowers, making them discoverable, queryable, verifiable, connectable. So we can maybe share a link to the demo after whoever wants to visit it in the section below, I guess.
That'd be great. Yeah, I've got a couple questions after hearing all that. So you guys have clearly done a lot of great work on growing your business and the presence of your decentralized knowledge graph. And you, before going like decentralized, you were doing this in a more traditional centralized tech stack, and then now doing it decentralized. So I guess what made you make that shift, and why do you find your customers being interested in working with you in a decentralized manner versus what they may be able to do to solve a similar problem with centralized solutions? One of those things you hinted at, like competition and actually enabling competitors to work together for the first time. Is there anything else that you think is a reasoning why people are kind of moving towards this decentralized option?
Yeah, that's one of the big parts of it, definitely. So, for example, we had requests where, or even blockers, where people were just giving, putting large red flags to the notion of having one system and one company aggregate all the data from a specific supply chain. For example, this rail supply chain. If you look at it, like these trains go all over the place, and it's really hard to coordinate all of these companies to somehow decide, all right, we're going to use this particular database and this company is going to host it. Mm-hmm. Even though people kind of naturally think that's kind of the thing that's going to happen, well, we don't see it happening really. And in a way, supply chains are decentralized in many ways. It means a lot of different companies form a network and they somehow work together, and none of them is really the leader of this. Everybody contributes to it, somebody more, somebody less. So what happened in our case was that everybody was very interested in not only having governance of their own data and then having the ability to exchange that data between each other through the graph, but also interoperability. So that was one of the key things. Well, usually companies that develop a solution, a proprietary solution, tend to sort of make sure that they keep the value and the data in some way, which is happening in Web 2 a lot, which again was not, which usually goes against interoperability. Usually it goes the proprietary way. A lot of these companies just really need it because interoperability is key in terms of specifically supply chains, but really any new technology. We are strong believers in this, and that's why we're also really fond of Polkadot and having interoperability be a central theme of everything being done, because it unlocks so much more potential for network effects. And that's why not just Polkadot, we're part of many different communities. Like, for example, the GS1 community. This is a global organization for supply chain standards. They invented the barcode basically. So we are working together with them on building new standards actually, but also the W3C community, where we're very active in the semantic web community. Meaning really everything around knowledge graphs and that type of technology. So for us, going this direction in a proprietary way, building something that people are going to have, that are going to be against, hosting in one place. Even with companies such as IBM, which actually tried that in a way with their implementation of Hyperledger blockchain, and from what I'm seeing, they're not having a great time. It's essentially, we recognize that very quickly, and we also recognize that we don't want to be that actor. We want to build and we want to connect and leverage these network effects in an interoperable way. So that all made sense very much at the beginning, and even still today. So that's why OriginTrail is here to connect rather than somehow lock in terms of vendor lock-in, and is really to create this middleware layer of interoperability between individual sovereign systems, be that supply chains, which we traditionally sort of come from, or any new type of Web3 application that is going to be emerging. And in that sense, supply chains for us have really been like books for Amazon. It's just the beginning. It's how you kind of get the engine started. Right now, where once the technology has been proven in all of these enterprise cases, with all the necessary security and deployments, it's now ready to go into the mainstream for everybody. So that's what we're excited about.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess that's a good lead in to talking more about kind of the Polkadot ecosystem and using this to help you guys continue to scale. So could you maybe talk about where you are in that transition into this world of Polkadot, and maybe what's been completed so far and what's kind of coming next?
Yeah, absolutely. We are very excited about Polkadot in general. I personally am a big fan of, ever since the white paper came out, one of the first sentences of it is actually saying that interoperability is key and that the world is going to be a multi-chain world, and that completely aligns with the vision of OriginTrail. We have designed a multi-chain decentralized knowledge graph with interoperability in mind. So Polkadot, ever since from the beginning, plus with such a strong leadership who have a great track record building, well, basically the most adopted blockchain today, Ethereum. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking of Gavin, I guess you all know about it, but it's been a really great experience, and we've been part of a Substrate Builders program. So we work together directly with Parity developers on dedicated OriginTrail parachain. So that went really well. We had a great collaboration, and we are very close to actually being able to launch an OriginTrail parachain. But apart from that, because OriginTrail, like I said, is not a blockchain itself, this is just one track in which we see OriginTrail being part of the Polkadot ecosystem. Apart from that, probably even more important is going to be the integrations that are going to be enabled between OriginTrail and really any substrate-based blockchain. That means any parachain on Polkadot, on Kusama. And yeah, for those, we're creating modules, palettes, components that can be used so that building with parachains in Polkadot is with OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph is very easy by using parachains in Polkadot. Mm-hmm. And that's also a part of the topic of today's conversation, of course. But yeah, we're excited to get this in front of everybody and to enable all the parachains to use it, but also for integrating very tightly with the Polkadot ecosystem in many ways, including the parachain. Parachain, what we see there, one of the key things that we like is just this amazing configurability and modularity of substrate. So we see the OriginTrail parachain as ground to really optimize and tune what is needed for the OriginTrail decentralized knowledge graph utilization for certain cases, while other other blockchains, other parachains that are going to be focusing on things like, for example, DeFi. We optimize tools there for that specific use case, so that it can be useful and optimized in very different contexts.
Awesome. And I think just for people's background, I'll explain very quickly. You mentioned these palettes. So what you're referring to is with Substrate, it's very different than just building applications. It's basically this framework for custom building blockchains, which is one of the main reasons why a lot of people are coming to build in the Polkadot ecosystem is because of Substrate. And what Substrate is it's almost like I compare it to like a menu of, you know, items on a food menu, or if you're building a Tesla, you get all these, you get a menu of every type of, you know, the types of tires, the type of engine you want. It's the same thing with Substrate. There's all these options, but the super powerful thing about it is that menu continues to expand and improve over time. So what you guys are building is another new menu item that every parachain team building on Polkadot or Kusama has, and they can just take that palette or that menu item and then just plug it into their blockchain and immediately upgrade their chain without a fork, which is also very important to mention. And then once they have that palette in their blockchain, then they have the OriginTrail capabilities kind of out of the box for not only for their parachain, but for everyone building an application on their parachain. Is that
exactly?
Okay.
Exactly. It's like Legos, right? You just like take a couple of pieces and then you make what you need, and it's amazing. It's the most powerful framework for building anything in I believe in the blockchain space right now. So yeah, I encourage everybody to look into Substrate.
Yeah. Let's get into the integration then between our team. So Akala and OriginTrail. We're both very excited about getting this underway. And could you just talk about kind of the plans for this, what you see as the different kind of components of this integration looking like, and then we can kind of go into some examples of what this could unlock in terms of use cases.
Yeah, we are excited as well. This is going to be one of the key things in my view for the beginning of next year. It's going to be very powerful in terms of not just showcasing what can be done, but also opening up so many new possibilities with really utilizing OriginTrail within the DeFi space, and not just any DeFi space, but with this great set of tools that Akala is bringing. And what this will look like essentially, for those of you who like, again, just to repeat, OriginTrail is not a blockchain itself, but it works with multiple blockchains, and there's a token involved, which is used for incentivization of, well, basically the protocol functionality. And so that essentially with Akala, that would mean that the existing OriginTrail trace token would be bridged to the Akala blockchain. And we're working together on doing that in the following period, with basically enabling also trace token to be used as not just a token like it's used on other chains right now, where you have a different let's call it a base token, gas token to pay for gas, but actually on Akala it will be possible to pay for your transactions with trace token as well. So using only one token compared to two right now. So that's a really big thing, because it's going to just make things so much more easier and less complex, both for implementation, but also for handling. Also, what comes is basically this integration from the side of the palette. So using the Substrate off-chain worker palette for OriginTrail, to actually be able to enable any Akala smart contract or really application, as you said, built on top, to query through it verifiably to the knowledge graph, and also publish data on assets, and query them in any shape or form directly for a EVM contract like on Akala, or really a native contract or any off-chain code. So it's going to be very modular, and it's going to enable this connection out of the box. That's going to be very powerful, because having this enables infrastructure that not only are you able to query something from the decentralized knowledge graph, which is for example, data on some assets, but also to verify it. So you're able to do verifiable operations within a smart contract based on criteria you set for that particular thing. So yeah, in a nutshell, the integration goes in those two ways. So Akala is going to be another chain that OriginTrail extends to, and then through Akala, obviously, the rest of the Polkadot ecosystem will already get access to it. But also, anybody using Akala will be able to plug in the other direction towards the decentralized knowledge graph to query it and publish data to it. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. That's how it's going to work.
Yeah, and a couple other things I think to mention too are the potential stablecoin use cases. So the Akala dollar being able to be used within the Trace ecosystem is something that I think will be really interesting and cool to watch.
Absolutely.
And then the EVM, we're building this EVM plus environment that kind of blends these two worlds of substrate and then EVM above that. So working with you guys on getting like your smart contracts deployed within that EVM so that teams building within the EVM can also leverage your tech as well.
Oh, absolutely. It's good. Both of those are going to be really exciting, especially the introduction of the stablecoin directly into the ecosystem is something that hasn't been really part of the OriginTrail story up until now. So there's going to be a lot of things that I see already people sort of thinking of and having great ideas on how these building blocks really can be used together. I see all of these as building blocks, and the more we allow and open up for everybody to use and build, the more ideas can get generated, and the more network effects. That's what OriginTrail is really about.
Yep. Well, great. So I guess that's the background on the integration. Let's get into just what this could potentially enable as far as use cases. So you've kind of alluded to like real world assets. And when it comes to OriginTrail, being able to query like not only on-chain assets, but also assets in the real world that have been kind of verified and like, input into your knowledge graph. What could that look like then when we blend those two worlds of DeFi and this OriginTrail knowledge graph?
Yeah, so OriginTrail is really there to track any asset, physical or digital. And like we've been actually very hardcore active in the physical space, as I mentioned, with supply chain implementations and all of these retail use cases. And in that sense, blending this with the digital is actually something of a natural evolution. So both really need each other, right? And in that sense, it's going to look very interesting because you will be able to, for example, have a verifiable representation of a verifiable asset actually in the decentralized knowledge graph that you can query and understand some properties from the real world about it. For example, a document, like I said, which is some sort of audit or certificate. For example, you could think of a smart contract being able to get this data on a certificate, and because you have a certain certificate issued by maybe a school, which is verifiable, in that verifiable credential sense, you're able to execute something as opposed to somebody who doesn't have that. And think of any document really, or think of any physical object that you can prove that exists, or that you can actually verify some property of it. That is all going to be able to actually connect with the tooling, all the amazing emerging tooling in the DeFi space. So the ability to collateralize all that is one of the cool things that comes to mind. But also things like just any type of, let's say, codified decision making. For example, prediction markets is one good example we talked about, and it's really interesting because you will be able to get verifiable data from sources that you consider valid and verifiable from the graph directly into the contract, and then execute based on that, for example. So that's actually just those two are very wide in terms of what can be used and built on top. But we also see that there's going to be a lot of interesting cases where value, the proxy for value, is also going to come from this, as I mentioned, network effect. So we are actually big fans of it because we see the knowledge graph as the key materialization of network effects. We've seen that happen in social networks with Google. Basically, all these companies grew in value very congruent to the notion of something called the Metcalfe's law. For people who don't know about the Metcalfe's law, it's basically the law that says the value of a network is proportional to the square of the number of participants in that network, n squared, basically. And if you look at Facebook growth and you take the number of users as an element in the network, you literally see that the curve goes as very, very close to n squared, similar to other networks. Well, we see that happening with assets in the decentralized knowledge graph. And then essentially the parallels start happening from Web 2 in Web 3. We get things like Google search being powered in a decentralized way, but instead of paying Google to put you up on a list, you're actually going to be staking a token, and then you're going to have a market for that. Another one is the ability to actually get verifiable connections between assets and then actually valuing them, getting a proxy of the value based on the number of connections on them. And all of this ties really well into the DeFi space, which is all about tokenizing value and really using the tools to make sure that the markets are efficient. So I'm super excited to see what all this when all this gets onto Akala and how it's going to evolve.
Yeah, same here. So yeah, this has been, I think, really helpful for me and hopefully everyone else watching. We're at about a half hour, so I think we can probably wrap it up. I guess just in summary, we just kind of recapped OriginTrail. It's this kind of decentralized network of assets and data that can all create these associations between each other, and then that's being built on all these different blockchains now, including Akala in the Polkadot ecosystem. And this will allow any developer building on Akala to leverage this network and build applications that can call on this network and basically pull information that they've kind of accumulated in this decentralized knowledge graph. The integration between Akala and OriginTrail will continue to be developed, and we'll keep everyone updated on progress and of course on the launch of that on Akala. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Branimir. It's been a lot of fun talking to you about this, and hopefully we can follow up on this soon.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure. And yeah, looking forward to going further and integrating with Akala.
Awesome.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.